everybody. My name is Jacob Shekel, and this is the podcast of Unleash Your Mind. And today we have a special guest, and the guest is Phil Cicio. Phil Cicio is a self-made man who became a multi-millionaire. And the reason I'm telling you is, it's just to know where he's right now, and he's going to share his story, and we're going to talk about his story and his life story. Now, truly, I consider Phil Cicio as one of the group of the best coaches, the best mentors which I know. And he's also the author From Oil Rags to Riches. And to say the truth, basically, I know Phil, I think 9 years now, Phil, something like that. And he was my mentor when I did my life success consultant course with Bob Proctor. And he was one of my mentors there. So, Phil, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jacob.
And it's always good to see you and to talk with you.
Likewise.
So, Phil, we're going to talk about the book that you wrote and about your story and to show where your life started. Because seeing a person that he reached to whatever level of success, we forget sometimes where he started from. Okay. And so you were born in the USA, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was.
And your parents are from Sicily. And when you were about 14, your parents decided to go back to Sicily, right?
Correct.
So
yes.
For you, I believe it was a cultural shock.
Big cultural shock, big shift in my life when that happened, right? You know, as a teenager, being pulled away from your life, what you have, your friends, the culture, the language, there were lots of things to have to overcome by moving to Sicily. And so, yeah, it was a big culture shock for me.
So share with us more about this story. What happened in Sicily
Sure.
when you came back?
Honestly, I was already struggling at that age, right? When I was a young boy, I had a very low self-image, Jacob. I was struggling emotionally. I was struggling physically. I wasn't doing very well in school. I wasn't very popular. A lot of things were going on with me personally, and that was something that I kind of suppressed. I kept inside, right? So I wasn't the popular kid in school. I certainly wasn't smart. I really wasn't able to. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I also, my parents kind of restricted us a little bit too, right? They didn't want us to get into any trouble. So I wasn't able to go to the normal things that teenagers went to, whether it was a school dance or the party down the street. So I was kind of in my own little bubble, but I was also lacking in self-image. I had at 14 years old, I still hadn't really developed, right? And so this was a big challenge for me. And my friends were becoming young men and the girls were becoming young women. And I still wasn't progressing. So I was slow to progress, as a young boy into a man. So that also caused some, emotional, I guess, scars, if you will, because, I couldn't compete. I couldn't date. So I was kind of a wreck inside as far as my self-image went. And now my parents say we're moving to Sicily. So I moved to Sicily. I really don't, I had been there on vacation a couple of times with my family, but we're going from, where I live in a city in the United States, just outside of Boston, to a little tiny village in Sicily where there were about 3,000 people living there, right? And, I usually express when I got there, some of the traumatic things that you see where, men still on donkey commuting from one place to another on a donkey and, having to stop in the street to let the shepherd go by with sheep, right? It's like, this is like going into the Wayback Machine for me from going from Boston to a little town in Sicily called Sambuca. But nonetheless, we're there. And I'm struggling with the culture. I don't know the language. I didn't really know how to speak the language. First of all, in Sicily, they don't speak Italian. They speak Sicilian for the most part. At least when I was there, they did. And then in each little village, they have their own dialect of Sicilian. So language is difficult there. And I didn't understand any of it, right? My parents spoke, Sicilian in the house, but not really to us, to each other when they yelled at us, right? So I knew all the swear words, stuff like that. But anyways, my parents put me into the school system there. And it's interesting. I get into the school system. It's just a little tiny school, and there's no tutoring, there's no help, and I just had to try to push my way through it. And because I didn't understand anything, I decided that this isn't working for me. And not only did I struggle in English here in America, but in there I just couldn't push forward. So I quit. I walked out one day, and that was the end of that. And my parents were really disappointed that I quit school, but my dad said, you got to do something. And so he said, find something that you like to do and get to work. Here I am, I'm 14, maybe turning about 15 years old. And I decided that, why don't I try something that I think I might love, which was, I loved cars. So I decided to go into an apprenticeship as an auto mechanic. And I did that. I went into a shop as an apprentice, worked for a man for a little while. Then I left that shop, went to another shop, worked for this three brothers for quite some time. And I really loved what I did, and was really good at it. It was the only thing I was good at. During that period of time, I still hadn't developed, though, right? So I was good at being a mechanic, but still physically, even as I turned 16, 17, 18, 19, I still hadn't really developed. And that was causing me some more internal pain because of my self-image was really, really low. Couldn't compete, couldn't date. The only thing I was good at was cars. And while I was in Sicily, a doctor was trying to help me, right? A doctor was trying to help me. They injected me with something to try to help me develop. And eventually, boom, I became a man, but it was really late. It was in my 19 or 20 years old. And so, we talk about how sometimes things from your childhood can affect you as an adult. Well, even though I had developed, I still felt like I was a little boy. And so I carried that throughout my life. I wasn't very confident. I wasn't very successful in many ways, except for being an auto mechanic. And so that's where sort of the struggles were, because I took all of that and I carried that into my life going forward. As a matter of fact, I don't really remember truly having a level of success, how you would define success, until in my mid-30s. I was an auto mechanic until my mid-30s. And although I was good as an auto mechanic, that was the only thing I was good at. And I was struggling in other areas, and ended up getting married. I had 2 children, but I don't believe I was really effective as a father, right? As a role model during that period of time, because again, I was still suppressing some of the things that I had from childhood. And eventually I started to study like you did. And I found my way through studying the mind, the subconscious mind, and understanding personal development. And, the first book that I read was Think and Grow Rich. Might have been one of the first books you read.
Yeah.
Got me to think a little bit differently. And that led me to another book, which led me to another book, which led me to literally hundreds of books. I started to immerse myself in personal development. And I was still an auto mechanic at the time, still struggling. But eventually, some of that information that I was reading must have sunk in. And that's where I started to have a radical change in my life.
By the way, Sambuca is the name of the village that created the liquor.
Yes, Sambuca di Sicilia. No, it didn't create that liquor. I think the liquor was created in another place called maybe Sambuca in Italy, but in Sicily, this wasn't the village where it was created. No.
It's a great anise liquor. I love it.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Listen, by the way, do you believe in past life?
I'm open to all kinds of different ways of thinking, and I'm still curious, and I'm still working towards understanding the realm, right? I do believe that we're always in transition. So I do believe at some level that maybe this body stops, dies, but the soul continues on. So if it continues on, then it must have come from somewhere, right? So I haven't done enough study to be, to make a commitment on that, but I do believe that there's always I believe that there's always movement. And so we just transition from one life to the next.
Absolutely. So the reason I ask you is because one of my past life was in a village in Sicily.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
It's called Monte Caputo.
Okay.
Palermo.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Apparently I was told this one. I was told usually when I'm doing the past life regression, people telling me where they live, but that's something which a friend told me, and she told me that I live there in Monte Caputo. I never been there in this current life. Sure. But that was intriguing because you're from Sicily. I said, I just mentioned it.
Well, I hope you go there someday in this life.
Absolutely. At least the places which I'm aware of, yes, I'm planning to go.
Good, good.
So now today, what are your daily habits? Now that you created your life, that you studied, that you created the life that you want, the life where you're helping others.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm still trying to do more, be more, have more, give more. I'm still not done yet, Jacob. But my life has radically changed. So, I went from an auto mechanic working here in the United States I was at the dealership for 21 years, but for at least 15 to 18 of those years, literally working on cars, and then eventually transitioning through my personal development, my growth. And so today, I've left the dealership world, obviously. I did that in 2007. And when I did that, I began to really study. I studied like you did with Bob Proctor. And I learned a lot about myself and learned a lot about others, and decided that my life's mission was to help others make that transition from where they are to where they want to be, really close the gap between who they are and who they want to be. And most people, they look at their vision of themselves, where they want to go someday, and then they look at their life, and there's a real disconnect between where they want to be and where they are. And most of them kind of fall in that. They get miserable about it. They start thinking, well, this is just my life. This is my lot in life. And my goal is to get people to realize that they can bridge that gap by changing the way that they think. And if they change the way that they think, they change the way that they feel. And if they change the way that they feel, they change their behaviors, they develop new habits, and eventually they can change their life, but not if they're stuck in their old life. And so I started to understand the process. I changed my life through the process. I didn't have the tools that we have today. I didn't have I think I stumbled onto it more than anything else. So it took me a lot longer than it should have. But today what I do is I help people bridge that gap between knowing what they want and actually doing what they know. And so today I coach, I mentor, I train. Most of the work that I do is training in the area of personal development and also professional development. I help people think differently about what's possible for them. I get them out of their comfort zone, right? And most people are just afraid to do the things that they know they need to do. They don't know why this fear exists. And we were talking before this call, and you were sharing with me in your work that some of those fears may come from past life experiences, right? And so they bring those into this life. And some of these come from just their childhood, like me. See, for me, the reason why I feel like I've struggled so much to achieve success was because of my thoughts about myself, right? So if you think about this, when I was a child, I was afraid of others, right? I wasn't developing, so I didn't want to get in any fights. I was always afraid of, I was worried about what people thought of me. I couldn't compete. And then think about this 25, 30 years later, some of those same thoughts and those feelings still come up, right? And we carry those into our daily, activities. So let's say today you asked me to get on this call. Before I get on this call with you, oftentimes those thoughts can creep up and create the same feelings, like I'm not worthy of doing this, or how can I do this? I'm just still that little boy without any confidence, without any level of ability. And those thoughts from so long ago can surface now and cause me to say to you, Jacob, I don't think I can do this. The goal is to understand that stuff happened so long ago. Why are you letting it affect you now? Shut off those emotions, create new emotions so that you can start to do the things, move past those fears. And that's why I can do what I do now. Now, here's the thing though, Jacob. It often resurfaces. I recently was going into a building in New York City, a skyscraper. I was going up to one of the top floors there to go work with 3 people. They were executives. They were the CEO, the CFO, and the HR director of the Fashion Designers of America. This is a large organization. I mean, we're talking about people on this board are people like Vera Wang and Michael Kors and some of the great fashion designers, in our world. And as I'm going in there to go work with these people for 2 days, and I'm heading up the elevator, that little boy stuff creeped in. I started to get anxiety as I'm going up the elevator. Am I worthy of this, right? I still somehow it crept up on me, and it was kind of strangling me. And so it creeps up on you. What you have to understand is when that happens is to be able to, knock that down, right? Say, hey, wait a second, that was 30 years ago or 25 years ago, whenever that was. Why are you letting that affect you now? And still break through and move forward. And most people, they don't. They would stop the elevator and go right back down. I'm using that as a metaphor, but the reality is I wanted to do that. So no matter how much work you do on yourself, it's continual, right? Personal development is a journey, and you need to do it lifelong. You can't just stop, right? So I'm way past being that kid that got bullied. I'm way past being that child who hadn't developed. I'm way past that child who did poorly in school. But all those things can creep up, and they can affect us in our life as we're adults. Even though we have proof all around us that we're successful and that we're smart, and we have degrees on the wall that prove it, and we have money in the bank, and we have this beautiful home, all that stuff is proof that all that stuff's not true, but sometimes we're blinded by that. And so my work is to get people to realize that they not only can get out of their past and into their future, they can create the life that they want. And I do that through coaching and training. And that's my life now. The habits, you asked me what my habits are. My habits are pretty simple. I get up every morning and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everything that I have, everything that I've had, everything that I've lost, everything that's coming my way. I literally do. So I've lost a lot, Jacob. I've lost millions of dollars, and I'm grateful for that. I have now more, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for what's coming my way. So I start out in a state of gratitude, which, just puts you in a really good, I guess I'll call it a vibratory state. You can't be in a negative state if you're grateful. Then I think about the things that I want to do with my life. I visually see, so this is a habit I have, I visually see my future life before me, and I put myself in it like it's happening now. So that's another habit that I have. The third thing that I do is I set the intention for the day. What is my intention today? And I decide what I'm going to intend to do today. And so I want to make sure that I set the intention, because if I don't set the intention, somebody's going to set it for me, right? Somebody out there in my environment is going to dictate how my day goes. I'm not letting that happen. I need to be the orchestrator of my day, so I must set the intention. And then throughout the course of the day, I remind myself, and I do this, you can do this however you want. I use an app on my phone that goes off every 2 hours that says for me, not only to remember my intention, right, but to be my best version of me. And so I remind myself throughout the course of the day. So those are the daily habits that I've created. So in about an hour from now, this phone will buzz and it'll say, what was your intention and how are you showing up today? And that reminds me every day to stay with my intention and be the best version of me, no matter what my surroundings are, because things are going to happen today probably that I'm not going to be happy about. It's a rainy day out there. And, there are things that are going to come into my world, but I have to make sure that I don't allow the environment to dictate how my day goes, because I set the intention of how I want my day to go, which will translate into how I want my life to be in the future. The future version of me is different than it is today. And the only way I'm going to get there is to stick with those habits.
You know what you said, it was funny. I was laughing because today I heard a conversation between two women, and it was in the morning, and one said to the other, like, good morning. And today we can say the good morning, that it's good. Mm. And it was funny because yesterday it was raining all day here in Valencia, okay? Sure. And today the sun came out. And it happened to me, like I was thinking, like, why? And can't you say a good morning and it's not to mean it that it's a good morning when it's raining? What's the difference? It's because we're living according to the outside, whatever the conditions, the situations. And it's important, but you mentioned something with the story with the elevator that you went up and you felt that kicks in. What have you told yourself? How you did it really? What did you tell yourself that to change the shift there?
Okay, so as I was going up the elevator and I was having anxiety over whether I'm worthy or not, I immediately had to start to remind myself that I am worthy. Now, here's something that I do if I'm not in an elevator. Like sometimes I'm here in my home, in my office, and I'm planning on doing something, and I get a little bit of that anxiety. Well, right here in my drawer, I have a folder, and inside this folder, in this file folder, I have a whole bunch of thank yous. Right? This is my thank you folder. And so there's a whole bunch of cards and thank you notes in here. And I save these year after year. This is this year's. And so what I'll do if I'm home is start reading some of those. People saying, thank you for helping them or whatever it might be. And the testimonials, I might even go to my website and read some to remind me that I am worthy, that I am able to help others, I am able to do. So as I'm heading up the elevator to help these three people, and my subconscious mind says, who do you think you are? You're not worthy. You didn't even graduate high school. These people are educated. They're way more worldly than you. They're way more educated than you. How are you going to help them? When that starts to happen, I have to start to remind myself that I've helped others in the past. I'm helping people today. I am worthy. I've actually helped myself out of my own jams, right? And so I start to think about that. And I start to say to myself that I'm calm and confident. And And here's what I do. Before I go into any environment where I need to show up and be the best version of me, that doesn't match the version of me that I was in the past, when I have to convince myself, I often sit there and I say to myself that I'm worthy, first of all. But I say this, and for your viewers, you can change this word to whatever you want. I'm going to use the word God, but you can change it to universal intelligence, Buddha, higher power. I say that as I'm heading up the elevator, I say, God is going to work through me to give me the confidence, the engagement, the presence, the wisdom, the intellect to deliver for these people, because these people want what I have, and God's going to help me provide that. And I repeat stuff like that in my mind. I take the pressure off of me because I know that there's a greater power within me that will deliver that information. So as I was heading up there, I was saying this to myself, and I just did this the day before yesterday. I'm going to be with a group. Before I go in, they're all smarter than me, man. Most everyone that I train and everyone I work with has a higher level of intellect than me. They're smarter than me. They have a higher IQ than me. They're more highly educated than me. So when I go in, I often have to say to myself, God's going to work through me to give me the intellect, the wisdom, the knowledge, the present, the engagement, the humor, right? The participation, I say that. And that again goes back to, what am I intending to do today? And so my intention is set. I go in. So when those doors opened up and I walk in and there was the receptionist there, I had already set the intention of that. This was going to be a great day. They're going to I was going to be there for 2 days. So I said, this is going to be a great 2 days. They're going to love this. It's going to be the best in training and consulting that they've ever had. And I'm going to learn from them as well. They're going to teach me something that I can carry on to somebody else in the future. This is the inner talk that I have before I do what I do, Jacob, because if I don't create that inner talk deliberately, guess what creeps up?
The fear.
The fear, the little voice that says, who do you think you are? Just 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you were spinning a wrench in a shop. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are not worthy? And so I need to block that out with new intentions. And so I advise my clients to make sure that you have something queued up every day for when you feel that coming up, that you can say, nope, change that story. Here's the new story, and set the intention. So those are some of the habits.
Excellent. Thank you for this. There's in the past I had it before I came into the personal development world. I had my diving school, and I developed a technique of getting over fear. And it's amazing because I did like over 1,000 try dives and diving and student and all that. And with the technique which I used, I developed something which I used to hold their hands. And it's so funny because I'm big, you know me personally, and I'm big person, but they were even bigger than me, and I felt like, oops, I'm small here. And he was one guy, he was holding my hand, he was tattooed and bald and like this. You see him, usually you go to the other side of the street. And he was shaking, he was shivering like a leaf. And it's just to put, and the reason is just from the surface to put your head underneath. Just this level.
Yeah.
Small, tiny thing that can break everything. Now, my story in the past, I took a friend to do diving. I taught him, a good friend in the past, I taught him diving. And he taught me into the abseiling or downsailing, that when you're going from the cliff with the rope, like holding it.
Yeah, sure.
In Hebrew, we call it snapping. And I got there to the mountain in the desert. And we have a cliff like 14 meters, and I'm looking down and I said, thank you, I'm not doing it. I was afraid of it. And you see the guys, all the young other people that were doing it, and we were in the 30s, whatever. And the other people are doing it, and I'm like letting myself going to the side, seeing other going, and I was afraid. And at a certain moment, I understood that I need to do it. I need to get over my fear because I cannot do it. And it was much beyond longer before I had this technique, which I developed with the diving. And I went there and I looked down, I said, I need to do it. And I'm going to do it. Now, I went into the queue. People were waiting like to go one after the other, and I went into the queue. I said, I must do it right now. If not, the fear is going to kick in. And I put all the straps on me, and I went backwards, and I went to the cliff, and you push yourself holding the rope, and you need to trust, you need to have a faith that the rope is going to hold you. And then you kick the first time and the second time. And when I kicked the second time, I loved it. I just fall in love and I enjoyed that. And when I finished that 40 meter, I ran up to do it again. So, and I took something from that experience. I took the word snapping. And every time that I'm finding myself in a situation that the fear kicks in, like, I need to do something. I need to I get out of my comfort zone to do something which I'm not used to, I'm afraid to. I was shy as well when I was young. And you know how to act, but you get over it. But it's always there, somewhere hiding.
Sure.
And when I feel that, and I'm aware that I'm afraid of something or I'm blocked by something, I'm saying snapping and bang like this. And just like this. And that's what's happening. And changing life. Whatever.
Right. So what you're doing is exactly what we were just talking about, where the voice creeps in from that deep recesses of your subconscious mind, and you say, no, shut up, right? Stop that. And I'm going to go sniping or whatever you call that thing, right? And you visualize that, and it gives you the confidence, just like I did. I visualized myself doing things that, you know, express my confidence, whether it's standing on stage or you know, going and meeting with people that are more intelligent than me, whatever those things are. I visualize myself, or picking up something that's, you know, thank you note, saying, hey, Phil, thank you for coming and helping me, right? So those are the things that get you to change your thinking, because if you change your thinking, you'll ultimately change your life. If you stay in the same thinking, there is no way that your life will ever change. How can it? And so we've got to get people to understand this. If you do not change the way that you think, you will not change the way that you behave. And if you don't change the way that you behave, how can you ever imagine having a different life? But when you change the way you think, which changes the way that you feel, which ultimately changes the way you behave, ultimately, there's no choice but changing your results. And so that's the key to the process. And of course, you know, working with somebody and getting the help is important, because, you know, you can get derailed very, very quickly.
The reason to work with someone is because if we knew how to do it by ourselves, we would have done it a long time ago. Because we couldn't do it, we're still stuck there. So we need somebody to kick us and push us through the cliff.
Right.
When you were young and in Sicily and you decided to go and to move forward, because even, okay, you decided to stop, you quit school, not learning, which is what your parents were not happy with that. Mm-hmm. But you had some strengths. What were those strengths that you had? Because inner strengths.
Yeah. So, you know, at the time I didn't realize this, but, you know, I left my family in Sicily and came to the United States, right, on my own when I was about 19 at this point. I think I turned 19 when I got here. And so although I had a low self-esteem, I had some courage there, right? Like, who does that at that young age, right? Come and start their own life. But I did it, so I wasn't thinking it was courage back then. I really wasn't. I was just thinking that I needed to make a change, and I was going nowhere. And at the time, being an auto mechanic in Sicily, when you become the master yourself, the evolution of that is to start your own business, your own shop, right? I can't work for my master forever. I wasn't really getting paid. And so now it's time to go out and do my own thing. And I looked, I'm in this small little village, and if I just open my own shop, what I'm going to be doing is taking some work from my master, which just didn't seem like was fair, first of all, but also didn't seem like we're going to all struggle, right? We're just spreading around. There's only so many cars in our town, right? And so I decided that I was going to leave. Now, I also was rebelling against my parents a little bit too at the time. And so I kept saying, you know what, I'm going back to America. I'm going back to America. So eventually, you know, you say it enough times, you better do it. And so I left. So looking back now, I think that maybe one of the strengths I had was some courage to do that, because, you know, it took a lot. I came here with nothing. I literally landed here and I had the equivalent of $200 in my pocket. And so I struggled. I remember there were a lot of times where I had no money, and I was borrowing money from a good friend of mine who was an auto mechanic at the dealership that I work with. He's still my best friend. His name is Brian. I'd have to borrow money to get gas to be able to get home, or to buy, you know, a sandwich to eat. And I was struggling. There were times during my life here where I had no money for food. And the only way that I could eat was, we were fortunate at the dealership that I worked at, 3 times a day, they call it a coffee truck would come. A guy would show up in a little truck with food, and he allowed you to take the food on credit, because he knew on Friday when we got paid, we could pay him. And that's how I survived. I was literally surviving off of this coffee truck and my friend giving me gas money. So I struggled a lot. So I guess some of the things was, and I didn't go back to Sicily. I stuck it out. I fought, I worked. So I think that my strengths as a young man were strengths that I didn't know I had, but they were courage and persistence. And so not knowing it though, I just thought I was, struggling and I was stupid, right? But I think it was courage and persistence would probably be my strongest, I guess, strengths. But I think it was a means for survival too, right? I needed to survive and I didn't want to call dad and say, I need money. I never want to call dad and mom and say, I need to come home. I committed to never doing that. So even though I was starving and even though I was scared and even though I didn't have any money, I had the courage, I guess, to keep moving forward and not call my parents for help. I never called them for help.
Wow, that's amazing. How would you say, how you describe your strengths today?
Today, I think that I'm a more caring person than I ever was. I think that I have a lot of empathy for others and their struggle. That I never did, right? I always just thinking about myself. I don't think about myself as much anymore as I think about others. I still am persistent. I still have courage. I still feel like I have a lot that I need to express, but I'm a more loving person, more caring person. And I, one of the things for me that I think is really, I think a strong, I guess, value or support or whatever it might be that keeps me going is I want to be able to give more to others that I never did in my earlier life, right? I was always trying to get more for me. I spent most of my life trying to get and not as much of giving. And so I want to end my life with people being able to say that Phil was a real giver. Like I think about, when I'm, and this might sound morbid, but when this body is done functioning and I'm laying out there in a casket and everyone's at my wake.
That's my last question. We haven't reached there. That's
I don't want to, I've still got a lot to do, man. So I don't want that to happen right away. But when that does happen, I don't want people standing around me as my dead body is in the coffin and talking about weather and sports. I want them to be talking about the impact that I may have had on them, the impact that I might have had on the community or the world at large. I really don't want them talking about the weather and sports. I go to, you probably do too. We go to these funerals and wakes and people are talking about things that are not the person. I want to make sure that I leave at least that behind where people are saying, you know what, they're talking about me, not about me because, oh, Phil is this or that, but the impact that I've had on their lives. And that's important to me now where it never was when I was younger.
Yeah. And it's also changed, I think, with the age. I think we
feel
with the age.
Yep.
How would you describe your challenge, your inner challenges today that you have?
I have lots of inner challenges, Jacob. They're those thoughts of I'm not worthy. They creep up all the time. It happens all the time. And so I am able to push through where I never used to be able to, but they creep up on me. And I know the people that are listening to this, they know it too. Even though you've had some success, you got that promotion, you started your business, that creeps up on you. How long is this going to last? Are they going to figure me out? Am I worthy? So I still have that challenge, even though I still do. The difference is that I do the thing. Like, let's just say right now I'm being hired to go speak in front of an audience of, maybe 5,000 people or something. That would cause me a lot of anxiety, but I do it anyways. And I do it effectively and I'd be great at it. And afterwards I'd be like, why did I have that anxiety? So the anxiety still creeps up because I don't feel like I'm worthy, because that old paradigm, I haven't been able to get rid of it, but I am able to fight it off when I need to. And that's the difference. I think that most people, they don't know they can fight it off and it overpowers them. So those are still challenges. I want to believe that I'm going to have those the rest of my life, but I think it keeps me grounded. It keeps me recognizing that, I won't get too big for myself because I know that I have to fight that challenge. So I think it might be a blessing and a curse, but more of a blessing than anything else.
It's a blessing. I think it's a blessing because it's always to know where we are. And when we have challenges, basically it's just helping us to grow.
Yes, absolutely.
So we always need to be there. And always there's I used to practice ninjutsu many years ago, the ninja style. And the beautiful in the ninja style, when you're doing the whole circle, the whole round, you're learning everything.
Yeah.
It's another circle, you start from the beginning. You start from level 1. Now you can be with the black belt starting from level 1. And then you do it again and again and again. So you're always increasing. And you actually, every time that you're starting from level 1, it's like you're going deeper of understanding why it's working, how it's working.
Sure.
So it's also when we have the challenge all the time, and I have as well my challenges, but when we have those challenges, always like to bring us, we want more. We go deeper now. Instead of going higher, we're going deeper. And
Yes,
that's amazing.
absolutely.
In your book, you have your book next to you, right?
I do, yeah.
I don't have the book here with me.
How to Live a Life Rich with Purpose. Look, I didn't write this book to be a best-selling author. I wrote this book to share my journey and teach through my journey. It's not just the story of my life. It's a lesson, a journey with lessons. And so if you're struggling to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be, I recommend that you go to Amazon and grab it. You can get it all over the world. So From Oil Rags to Riches, How to Live a Life Rich with Purpose, because I believe that living a purposeful life is really where success comes from.
And you wrote there a sentence which I grabbed it, which I liked it, and I know it. The more you teach, the more you learn.
Yeah, no doubt. And so I am grateful that I'm able to teach almost every day. I'm out training and teaching and coaching and almost every day. And through every experience that I have, whether it's coaching or training, I learn so much from it. And so, and again, that's one of my intentions. Not only am I going to deliver, but I'm going to learn.
And one of the things when you came back to America, you were not aware that you don't have the papers that you need, the education.
Mm.
How did you leverage that weakness and how it helped you to go up?
Yeah, so when I came here, I thought that I could easily get a job, right, at a dealership working for as an auto mechanic. My goal was to work at a Mercedes-Benz dealership. But I didn't know that I needed a high school education and certification from an automotive training school. And if I'd known those things, I think, Jacob, I probably wouldn't have come here, right? Because that would have kind of held me back. But fortunately, I didn't know it. And I was very fortunate. When I went into the dealership for a job, the person that was there that was going to be interviewing me happened to be from Sicily, which is, I guess, divine, intervention, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But he was from Sicily. And so he was right from the same province I was from, Agrigento. And so he didn't care about my high school diploma. He didn't care about education. He didn't care about anything. He just hired me because he knew that I knew how to work on cars. I learned how to work on them the old-fashioned way through the apprentice master model. I was very grateful for that. And he really helped me get going. And that started my career as an auto mechanic here in the United States because of that. So how do I take that lesson into my life now? And how did I? In the beginning, I didn't really know. I just thought it was coincidence. It was just a coincidence. And I had learned that coincidence is just a word that we've made up to not have to explain that kind of situation, right? Where everything comes together in perfect order, where the universe brings you everything in perfect order, where God is working to help fulfill your desires, right? That was God working to help me fill my desires. But at the time I thought it was coincidence. Man, this guy was from Sicily. What a coincidence, right? Yeah. Well, now I don't think like that anymore. I look at that as a time where I had a true desire for something greater, and the universe worked perfectly to bring the perfect person into my space to make that happen. So now I know that when I'm struggling with something and I don't know my way, I don't have to worry about it, because guess what's going to happen? Coincidence, right? Something's going to happen that's going to put me in the right direction, or the resource is going to come, or the idea, the person that's going to help me get what I want. And most people say, wow, what a coincidence. How lucky you were, right? But I know that it isn't luck or coincidence. It's the universe working in perfect order, or God, or whatever your belief system is. So when I struggle and I don't know how I'm going to get where I want to go, I let go of that. And I let go, and I know that if I just let go of it, the way will be shown, right? And it's important to understand this. I don't have to know how I'm going to get where I want to go. The how doesn't matter. I just know where I want to go. And then I have to be open to the ideas that come to me and to the people that come to me. And so I don't have to really create the plan. I just have to have the vision for it. And then I know that things will happen, that people will say I got lucky or there was some sort of coincidence. But the reality is it's the universe working in perfect order to get me exactly what I desire.
Because all the lessons, all the difficulties that the universe is giving us, and I'm saying the universe is bringing us those difficulties. So if the universe is bringing us, who am me that I'm going to say, no, I don't want it? That's the lesson.
Right.
That's we need to grow up. And this is what is going to help us.
Exactly.
Most people have fear that blocks them. What do you have to say about
Well, I think fear block. I think that's the reason why most people don't achieve their goals and aren't successful is because of the fear. But fear is just, it's made up in your mind. It's not even real, right? You've heard the acronym fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear is just, it's the belief in the unseen in the negative, right? So we're believing in something that we haven't seen yet in the negative, and that negative emotion holds us back, so we freeze up. Where the opposite of fear is hope, right? And hope is believing in the unseen and the positive. And most people that are watching this or listening to this call have been hopeful. And that's also believing in the unseen and the positive. So if you can believe in the unseen and the positive and be hopeful and change your state into a place that will help you get what you want, why, you know, and it works that way, then why don't you turn fear into hope, right? And so whatever you fear, change that thought process to being hopeful and expectant, because fear is just, it's just false evidence. It's just something that you're seeing in your mind's eye that hasn't happened yet, that creates a state that causes you to freeze up. None of it's even real. Everyone on this call has experienced fear that isn't even real. Right now, somebody on this call is afraid of something that hasn't happened yet. And if you think about that, if you step out of yourself for a moment, you say, wait a second, I'm afraid of this thing that hasn't even happened yet. That's ridiculous, right? But it causes you to freeze up and not do the things necessary to make that your outcome better. So if you have fear, the first thing you have to realize is you have to think about this. Is it real in the first place, right? Is it happening now, or am I making it up? And then move forward. You know, you have to, without fear, if you're not in fear, then you're not trying anything that's, you know, worthy of a major breakthrough anyways, right? You're going to be stuck in your old ways. So we need to have fear as a indicator to me that I'm doing something that's beyond my comfort zone that's going to give me a breakthrough. No fear, no breakthrough. So embrace fear, embrace that challenge of fear and push through it. Promise you, it's the only way you're going to grow. No growth happens inside the comfort zone. All of it happens when you move outside the comfort zone.
True. And what do you have a tip for, before we're ending the conversation, this interview? What is your tip to help people to change their life?
Well, I think that the number one tip is, first of all, you have got to start to think differently, okay? Whether that is, and you need to have a mentor, okay, or a coach, or somebody's going to guide you. Now, a coach can be someone like Jacob, or it could be someone like me. It could be a friend of yours, or it doesn't matter. You need somebody to help you. Also, I would recommend that you find those coaches and those mentors in the pages of books. And so I think that the most important thing is to make sure that you're reading continually to keep your mind immersed and marinating in what's possible, not what's impossible. So here's my tip. Read the right books, get around the right people, okay? Listen to the right stories, and catch yourself. Try to do what you can to catch yourself in the negative stories, so you can say, I'm not going to tell that story anymore. I'm going to tell a new story. Whether you have to use an app on your phone to remind yourself like I do, it doesn't matter. Remind yourself constantly to be changing your thinking, because your thinking has gotten you where you are, okay? Your past has given you what you have currently, but your past is no reflection or no indication of your future unless you continue to live there. So the story has to be, I'm out of my past into my future. Your past thinking has gotten you where you are. If you want something different in the future, you got to change the way that you think. And you do that by immersing yourself in the right books, getting around the right people, listening to the right audios, all the things that you and I have done, Jacob, to change our lives.
Well, I'll just add one thing to that, and they can create their dreams as a goal, to become their goal.
Yes, absolutely.
Something that will guide them, because most of the time when they see themselves, they see the problem, they see the issues, they see the difficulties, it's most of the time because they don't have any plans, anywhere to go. They don't have any goal to set.
No vision. There's no vision. And where there's no vision, the people what? Perish, right? There has to be vision, because it's the vision that gets you emotionally involved in it. The conduit here, I'll finish with this, okay? The conduit between what you visualize in your mind, what you want, the vision, and actually it manifesting in reality is how emotionally involved you can get in it. Because the emotion is what drives the body, right? So you visualize something so exciting, so beautiful, so scary too at the same time, that it causes so much emotion in this body that this body goes and does the thing necessary to actually manifest the desire. everyone on this call has done this before. Whether you wanted to buy a new phone, you got so emotionally involved in it, you saw it in your mind's eye. It's something simple as this, or an iPad. You saw it, you got so emotionally involved in it. Even if you didn't have the money, you found a way to get the money to get the iPad or the phone. It's no different when you have a big goal that is about changing your life. Get so emotionally involved in it, so immersed in it that the body goes out and does what's necessary. So yes, you're right, Jacob. A powerful vision will drive all the forces necessary to manifest that vision into it.
Everything together. So you asked, my last question was actually what you want people that, you know, one day we become a history, and then what we want people to remember us for. So
yeah,
just already. So
well, I kind of said that when we were talking about, you know, what I want to be remembered for. I really want to be remembered for impact that I had on others and my community and the world. And I'm hoping there'll be an impact on the world. And so I want to be remembered for that. Not so much what I've accomplished, but what I've helped other people accomplish.
Absolutely. Phil, it was always, as usual, it's great to talk with you. And thank you.
Likewise. My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this. And, you know, and I know you're doing great work out there. So anybody who's on this call, listen to this, you've got to work with Jacob. He's doing amazing work out there. He's incredibly passionate about what he does, and he's not doing it for anything else but for you. And so get involved with him, work with him, because I can promise you, if you want some life-changing experiences to happen, this is the man to make it happen for you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
You bet. Take care, everybody.